Thanks, Morten, for inviting me. I don't know if anyone has been here in all the events, but I was here a year ago, and it's great to finally talk about something concrete, something that can bring examples and talk about how we actually do it. So today I brought basically two aspects where we use of our product that we use automation in messaging, and that is for our onboarding and reactivation. And for those that don't know, I'm Christos. I'm responsible for the app. I work in the product team. I'm responsible for the app at Vivino. That means also all the app users. And for those that don't know what Vivino is, which I'm pretty sure everybody does, we're basically a wine app. And also we're a startup. And I want to stress especially the startup part, because it means that we don't have a lot of resources, as most of you know, but we also have a lot of users. We have 3 million monthly active users, 11 million installs and so forth, which actually means that we need to rely on automation for our messaging. It's simply unavoidable. We don't have account managers to reach out to users or to talk to them individually. So having a sophisticated or at least an efficient approach into talking or communicating with our users is paramount. So what I brought today is basically, I want to answer the question why these two aspects of our product. And also I want to give some concrete examples of how we did it and what did we learn from it. So we're going to see some results and learnings of of how we tried and we failed and some things that worked. So why exactly onboarding and reactivation? What is the problem? And to be honest, we thought that we didn't do good enough job at it. And we thought that there is room for improvement, in terms of making sure that all the users understand the product, they go through the basic steps of using the main functions of the product, and also coming back to it. And of course, you might argue that well, especially for mobile, you should be building your product in such a way that onboarding and reactivation should be built in the product. If you're not, perhaps you're doing something wrong with the product. You should go back into the drawing board of the product rather than relying on secondary channels like communication to do that. And the truth is though that it's not really like that. I mean, there's as much, so much you can do with the product, especially on mobile. I talked about it before. Our, first 60 seconds are super crucial for us. We want to make sure that our users get core product value very fast. So that means that we don't have a lot of leeway to change in the product, that much in order to afford for, for all the users. As Morten said, there is going to be some users that simply don't get it, and we are willing to accept that, and we're quite happy with how our product has been performing in terms of onboarding. So we didn't really want to change radically that. And the second kind of justification we gave was basically we didn't do any email or push. We were just not using these two channels at all. So why not, instead of relying on them on onboarding, why don't we use them complementary, right? So what do I mean by onboarding? How do we see it in Vivino? And it has two aspects. It has both a temporal aspect and also a procedural aspect. The temporal aspect is basically the how much time we consider for onboarding, and that is the 10-day mark. The 10-day mark for us is very, very important. We know that if a user's lifetime passes this 10-day mark and we feel they haven't been onboarded properly, then it's very unlikely they're going to do so after that. So this is the first milestone, and that's where we put a lot of effort in our communication to cover these first 10 crucial days. The second milestone is the 30 days, is something that we're now building on, and that's something we found out later on, that there is an extended period of onboarding that perhaps the first 10 days you have done some things towards your onboarding, but you haven't completed it. So there's the short crucial period, and there is an extended period of 30 days. When we talk about the procedural aspects of onboarding, we talk about a series of actions. I work a lot with the TARI model, for those that know it. It's basically a way of internalizing certain processes, like the main functions of the app or the core loop of the app, by basically internalizing any triggers. So, as for those of you that know Vivino, we are a wine app, which means you need to scan a wine. And wine scanners, they're a relatively new thing. They haven't been around for that long. And that means that for most people, they don't have internal triggers for when they look at the bottle of wine or when they drink wine to take out their mobile phone and scan it. That's not the first thing that comes into your mind. So the idea, again, working with the Atari model, is that if we go through the entire loop enough times, like if they get the trigger, either that is through a communication effort or like an external trigger, then they do the action, the scan, and they rate the wine. They get the internal reward through the system and go through the loop enough times, then they're going to make the mental model that every time I'm looking at the wine or I'm drinking, I need to scan that wine. And that's kind of like the first tool we use towards our approach. The second tool we use is basically Mixpanel. We track everything with Mixpanel, and Morten talked about like the difficulties. It simplifies things for us a great deal. It helps us basically track every user action that happens in the app. And that means, for the second aspect of using automation in communication, reactivation, is that we can track when users become inactive or dormant, as we like to call them. And basically, what was the last thing they did? Because that's also very important. Like, what was the last action they took before they left? So basically, that's that's how we think about these two aspects. Starting off with onboarding, we tried out a lot of different things, and we tried different approaches to it and tactics. But this is what we came at it in the end. We call it the 10-day core communication approach. And that is, as you can see, we divide, it's an intense 10-day communication effort we do, where we launch, communication every 2 days towards our users from the install date. We used to have only that part covered, so we only had a standard welcoming email that went off, when you installed the app and registered your account, we welcomed you, and that was it. We never basically contacted you back again, almost at all. Right now, what we do is we specifically try to push users or nudge users to do certain actions every day until they complete them. And the way we've structured it is by having primary actions, which, again, through our analysis of Mixpanel, know that they are super crucial for a user to improve its chances for retaining. And these are scanning a wine first, giving it a rating, and adding a friend. So we persist in users taking these steps sequentially until they complete their onboarding. So let's say today you register your account with Vivino, you're going to receive your welcome email. Tomorrow, if you haven't really made your first scan, we will nudge you to do your first scan. If you have done it, that's great, but you haven't rated, you're going to be reminded to give it a rating. You have done both, then there's no communication the first day. And then we go on to the third day after registration, where we do exactly the same. So if you haven't scanned, we're going to keep persisting in reminding you that you need to do your first scan, experience your magic moment. And to the mix, we add also the adding friend. And then we go to day 5, where basically, if you have done all of these, you're very well, on track to be onboarded. So there's no reason to receive any communication from us. You have very good, progress on onboarding yourself. But then we use that opportunity to give you maybe a secondary communication. So we start introducing what we call not the core features of the app, but the non-core features of the app, or the non-core functions, like our e-commerce opportunities. And then on day D10, we do the same with premium. So we push you towards converting into a paying customer. We have an option in the 7th day, which is only I call it elective because it happens only for certain markets where we have wine offers, where we introduce all the users to basically the push offers that we do. So yeah, I know it's complicated, and I know like we can talk about this for forever. But basically, I want to show you how actually it looks. We tried both, doing combinations of only email and not push, or only push and only email. But actually, not surprisingly, the one that worked the best was when we had both. When we have both, and we use them in conjunction of when we have newsletter notifications open for that user, or when we have push tokens, is what worked the best for us. And we try to do it, at least the email part, as a mobile first approach. We try to make them as you probably most of you have heard, look good on a mobile device rather than on desktop. We make them short, and we try to keep the communication as simple and actionable. Like the action part is really, really important. We try to make sure that the call to action is, visible from the very beginning, and that, the user is prompted to do that. We don't want the user to inform about, the features of the app. We want them to take the action for that onboarding. And the same, again, with push. So how has this been working for us? Basically, what we saw was that, we've been running this since late April. So it's been going out for a few months. So, we have a bit more conclusive evidence, right? And we're more confident in our results. We saw that, we increased basically all first new users when they do their first scan. Before we even launched it, we were very steadily between 70 and 71% of every new user doing their first scan within the first 10 days. Since we launched it, we have been consistently seeing an increase, of 10% closer to the 78, 79%. So, and that's been going on now for several months. So we can call it that this is secured. I'm usually very eager to, or very reluctant to not call something a success, but this has worked really well for us. Also, it worked really well to have users basically engaging more socially with our app. We've seen we almost doubled the follow friend actions within the app in the first 10 days, and actually tripled the possibility for users to then adding a second one the following days. So, compared to what we had before, it's a very fast improvement. We've seen a much increased social activity due to it in the app, both in terms of likes and comments. Unfortunately, we didn't see any effects on the ratings. So even though we have made very strong push towards the ratings, we figured out that actually it has moved the needle very, very little. And that's the learning number one from that, you have to go back to the drawing board sometimes in terms of your assumptions. So we assumed that rating your first wine was part of the onboarding, and now we are reworking that. We're reworking that assumption that users actually don't respond to that message no matter how hard we push to it. Other learnings we had, first of all, this is something that we figured out is that user attention is drifting away. Basically, we found out that for every past day we wait to communicate with our user from our install date, we basically lose 2.5 in open rate and a respective drop in engagement and conversion. That is consistent, because we've been sending a lot of these communications, both for push, and not open rate, but conversion for push and for email. I think it makes sense, right? It's when the user comes to you, they have, you have their full attention. They basically want to engage with your product. They want to use it. They came for a reason. They installed an app because, they took their precious space on their phone and added your 50 megabytes, to your app. So they're probably eager to use it. The further away you go from that action, that of maximum, let's say, attention, the less you're going to get. Don't take me wrong, it doesn't go to 0 and it doesn't go to 100. I'm still talking about the maximums and minimums. Generally we see a maximum and minimum for all our open rates here, but we consistently see that for every day we wait with a similar communication, then we drop the engagement and open rate by 2.5%. The second thing that we learned is actually that push is way more effective than mobile. It's almost 90 to 95% more effective in terms of of conversion, which also does makes a lot of sense to me, especially on mobile. I always say that email is just another app for mobile users, and that means that most users, in order to engage with your product, they have to go through another app. So they have to open the email, to read that email, and then go to your app. And again, no surprises, but it's something worth mentioning, especially if you work with mobile. The last and the most funny one is that actually, if you have well-executed animated GIFs, or non-well, just put some animated cuts, they will give you something. There's a lot of discussion about animated GIFs on email currently. We tried it, and the only thing we found was actually a 4 to 5% increase in engagement. It does not affect conversion at all. So whether you use animated GIFs or non-animated GIFs, it's not going to affect your conversion to your communication, but it certainly is going to make users spend some more time on it and read it. So overall, the verdict, I'd like to call it a success. I think our 10-day core email program has been so far a success. As I said, it's an ongoing thing. It's been going now for almost 5 months, but it's something that we're still examining and iterating. And the plan is now to take that next step. So go towards the second milestone of 30 days, where we're gonna, not be so, let's say, pushy or not so frequently communicating our users, but we are going to keep on the same path. Perhaps also adding several actions like secondary actions. Yeah, and about reactivation. So again, having seen the positive results from our for our onboarding, we thought, why don't we try to do also something for all our dormant users? And basically, dormant users, as I said, like we call everyone that hasn't logged in for the past 30 days. They haven't done anything. And actually, the first thing we did was, we launched a lot of surveys to all these users that we consider inactive, and we simply asked them a very basic question. How often do you drink wine? And then when we say, when we get responses for more than, almost every week or more than twice a month, then we ask them, why is it that you don't scan every wine? So, why is it that last month that you drank some wine, you didn't scan? So basically, what came up was that, 40% of our users simply forget to scan a wine. Again, as I said, it's because they haven't internalized that process. It's because whenever they see the bottle of wine, they don't think of their phone, and off our app. And it's gonna take time until they do so, right? So that's kind of like gave us the inspiration to say, okay, we need to try doing it with simple reminders. And again, we tried all kinds of different techniques to it. We went with different timings, different messaging, all kinds of mixed responses. But in the end, what has turned out to work the best for us is this. It's happy hour on Fridays. And I know for most of you probably don't know about it because it's not such a big thing in Denmark or in Europe. In the UK it is, but in the US apparently happy hour is a very, very big thing. Here in Denmark, we have Friday bars where we gather around and we drink beer. In the US, they have happy hour. So you leave the office early, and everybody goes out, and they have great deals at bars and and cafes, and that's what actually worked the best for us. So what basically we do is we just take that as an opportunity, and we use positive messaging to remind users, basically not necessarily about using the app, but just basically reminding them that it's time to drink, like making ourselves present, just giving them a reminder that it's time to drink, right? And that's a very positive message, and it's also a non-actionable message. This one is specifically designed so that it's not actionable. We don't expect users to do something, and that is because we don't know what they're doing. I mean, ideally, what I would like is to have a smart beacon on every bottle that whenever you're close to it, you're gonna get the push notification. But until that happens, I just have to take the next best guess, which is I need to find out when users drink. And you might say, why don't you use some kind of smart logic, machine learning with all your data you have in Mixpanel to figure out when they drink? And I'll tell you I'm working on it, but until then, the next best thing is to figure out literally when do people drink during the week, in every country. So that's where we are, and so far it has been working pretty well. It is temporal, right? We launch it on Fridays in the afternoon at 3, in the afternoon just before people leave work, and it's also easy to schedule. If you have a message that it's consistently every Friday at specific time, it's very easy to deliver. So how has this been working for us? Basically, we have so far 12 to 13% of inactive users that they haven't logged in at all for the past 30 days. They activate the same Friday with the push. The same is, or not the same, the same messaging but through email gives us only 4%, and I'll tell you why in a second. The great thing about it is that 92% of these users that we reactivate, they still remain active 4 weeks after that. So that's actually why I say that it's what has been working the best for us. So in terms of learnings from our reactivation campaign, learning number 1, apparently during happy hour, people don't check emails. That's something that we figured out, that that push again outperforms almost 3.5 times email. So again, it shouldn't surprise anyone. And the second one is that timing is super crucial. As you said, we didn't do a lot of A/B testing on this. We maybe changed the messaging a little bit, but what we really tested is actually the timing. We pushed even quarters or half hours between the timing of when people should be getting that, right? And that's where Mixpanel comes handy for us, because we can just say, we want that message to be delivered exactly at that minute to these users in their own time zone. So timing is super crucial. When you set reminders, obviously, right? So the verdict for that, I think it's promising, but we've been running it now for closely 2 months, so it's still under review. We are looking at it and thinking, okay, I believe that when it comes to communication, you have to look in depth of time, because you will reveal in the long term effects that you can't in the macro things, in the micro things, right? So right now everything is positive, we're excited about it, but in the longer term, you have repetition, you have saturation of the messaging, so you can't call it already a success. So we are reviewing it, and we're looking into other possibilities, for the messaging, and also for variations that go along with seasonality, so things like that. And I think that's all I have.